Hello everybody and welcome back to the United Stand. We are back with the B&B show, but the main star of the show is Ben Jacobs, transfer expert, excellent journalist. Thank you very much for joining me, Ben. We've got loads to get into today. Bit of an exclusive.
We certainly
as well.
do. I don't think that I count as the star of the show, but I do like the fact that this B&B is catching on.
We're trying to make it happen. It's just me and you, maybe. We'll get there in the end. I mean, you are going to join me in Manchester at some point in the future, hopefully.
I promise, yeah. Certainly before the year is out.
Yes, but up until then, we'll have you here. And I want to kick off with Ruben Amorim, Manager of the Month, Bryan Mbeumo, Player of the Month. All in all, a very good month for Manchester United, the month of October, and we can see this upwards trajectory now with Ruben Amorim. And is that echoed inside the club?
Yeah, I think it is. Ultimately, Ruben Amorim was under pressure heading into Sunderland before the October break. But as we've said on previous shows, if Amorim gets to the festive period, which he's going to now, and Manchester United are in the European picture, then the expectation has always been that then he gets the full season and things are moving in the right direction. It was a bit disappointing, of course, against Nottingham Forest because they had a second half lapse, but it was a fantastic finish by Ahmad to rescue a point. Man United will feel it should have been three wins and a draw. You take that. And now Tottenham are very beatable at home. I don't think I've seen a worse Spurs performance in their home game against Chelsea, where the XG was almost -1. And so much was made about Postecoglou and inconsistency. But Tottenham at home are there for the taking. Then, of course, after the international break, home to Everton. And the task for Manchester United is just to go on a long unbeaten run. And if they do that, I don't think they'll just be in the European picture. I think they're capable of Champions League football as well. And then regarding player of the month, manager of the month, let's hope the latter isn't cursed, first of all. But it's a strange one for me because a lot of Arsenal fans have messaged me today and said, how can the league leaders who also won 3 games and didn't concede a goal not have their manager, Mikel Arteta, get manager of the month? And it's like a fascinating debate because on the one hand, you just want winning to be so normalised and default that nobody really makes a fuss about it. And when that happens, you don't tend to get accolades and awards. And I think if you're Arsenal and you're top of the Premier League and you're winning those 3 games in October and you don't concede a goal, that's fine if you don't get any awards because it's become default. On the flip side, Man United are getting awards and it's something to celebrate, but they've got to get to a position where it's so normalised and there's a serial winning culture that nobody's thinking about awards because it is just the expectation. And they're not there yet. But if they can keep this unbeaten run going, then come 2026, they might be able to be back in that position. And if they are, then the glory days under Sir Alex Ferguson will hopefully not be too far away.
Getting me excited, Ben, but that's the thing. We need this award is brilliant because it's Ruben Amorim's first Manager of the Month as Manchester United manager. I was actually looking back, and I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got 1, Jose Mourinho got 1, Ten Hag had 3. I mean, how did it go so wrong? But Ruben Amorim now with his first one after rumours about him potentially losing his job. I think it's the best way you can bounce back from that and show people you are serious about this season. Your squad is behind you. He gave the players credit when he was speaking in an interview afterwards about the Manager of the Month. I think it showed his humility, also showed his strong man management skills, and Bryan Mbeumo, what an incredible signing he has been. So congratulations to Ruben Amorim, Manchester United, the backroom staff, and Bryan Mbeumo. Very good result for Manchester United winning them awards, but like you said, we've got to make it the norm. It's got to be the thing every single month that our players and our manager are in contention for them awards, because that means we're doing well. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to move on next of how to ensure we do get some European football, Ben. I mean, we've spoken about it on the show a couple of times now. I mean, probably more than a couple. But I want to start with that January window because I wanted to ask you the reality of that. Jason Wilcox did speak earlier in the week about the strong summer recruitment. And I just get the feeling that, is it a potential that we sort of ignore that January window because, like you said, it's usually a seller's market? Or is it one of them where we'll actually look to go and strengthen for Ruben Amorim if he's doing well?
No, I think they could attack the January market if the right names become available, but they won't panic buy, and they'll know that if they spend big in January, it might impact on the total that they're prepared to spend in the summer. in addition to that, if they get into January and hopefully they don't pick up any injuries, if the form continues, they may feel that a lot of the summer signings are paying off. So at the beginning of the season, and when Amorim was under more pressure, people were screaming for a midfielder. And I've said many times and reported it, 2, I believe, minimum are going to come in 2026. But Casemiro is playing really well and also scoring goals. If Kobbie Mainoo can get more opportunities, and if Manchester United are suddenly looking more fluid, then you don't need to do it all in January. So as you say, it's a seller's market, and I don't expect Manchester United to do anything rash in January, nor do I think they'll sign for the sake of signing. And although you could look at it, as you framed in your question, that if Amorim's on track for Champions League football at the middle part of the season, you spend to get Manchester United over the line. But the flip side of an argument is if they're building momentum and the new signings like Mbeumo and Cunha are having an impact and Mason Mount is fit and scoring as well, Manchester United might actually want the continuity and the stability. So I'm not expecting a crazy January. And I also think that there can be an element of one in, one out, not because of PSR specifically, due to the fact that Amorim will want to keep the squad size the same and tick things over and build momentum. So again, if Kobbie Mainoo says, I want to go on loan, and Manchester United agree, then of course you would think that would be contingent on a midfielder coming in, because they're not going to lose another midfielder and not add one. If Josh Zirkzee also asks for the same request and there's interest from Roma and West Ham in him, then they might look at a striker mid-season as well. So there'll be options there. But I think if it is a quiet window and form continues as of now, I don't think Jason Wilcox and Christopher Vivell or Ruben Amorim will necessarily be that disappointed, even though, of course, Manchester United fans listening are screaming into their computers and saying, we want all the players now. We need the midfielder mid-season. We want a fullback. But ultimately, if by the time the January window opens, the league table is as it is now, then maybe even some Manchester United fans that a few weeks ago were desperate for mid-season signings might also feel a bit calmer about the situation.
I want to ask you a few questions off the back of that. I mean, my first one is, do you think that Amorim trusts Kobbie Mainoo? Because although Casemiro and Bruno overall have been playing well, he really has struggled to get any form of game time. I know Ruben Amorim recently spoke out and said he sees Kobbie Mainoo training, he deserves to play, but we don't have them Carabao Cup games, which makes it difficult. But I do think to myself, if you did really rate him, surely you would at least be utilising him in games. And the fact that we're looking at 2 midfielders in 2026, I mean, do you think he does trust him as part of the long-term project?
Yeah, I do, but I think they've got slightly different philosophies on the kind of football that they want to play, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And then Amorim's been working with Kobbie Mainoo not about system and not about the physical side of the game, but actually the intelligence that he wants within this system. So Kobbie Mainoo spent more time than most, as far as I'm aware, doing tactical evolution. It's not about his physical attributes or his talent. It's about building a maturity and an intelligence. And you can have 2 kinds of speed of movement that Kobbie Mainoo's got. He's very energetic and athletic. It's partly why he's popular with Manchester United fans. And then, of course, speed of thought as well. And I think in the Premier League, you don't have time to think, then do. You have to act and know what you're going to do at the same time. And that's where other leagues, maybe you've got a chance to control the ball, receive the ball, decide what you're going to do. It's more of a simultaneous speed of thought, speed of mind. And Amorim is working on that with Kobbie Mainoo. And if they can get that part of his game right, then he's got everything in his locker to be an elite player for Manchester United, which is why I think the club are so reluctant just to let him go even on loan. And then the other factor is just, if you look at the midfield, Ruben Amorim loves Mason Mount. Bryan Mbeumo, player of the month for October. And we know that Matheus Cunha is going to start games when he's fit as well. So if Benjamin Sesko leads the line, then there's no space, as we've said in previous shows, for Cunha, Mbeumo, Mount, and Bruno Fernandes, unless Sesko doesn't start and one of them leads the line, or alternatively, Bruno Fernandes drops a little bit deeper. And that, of course, is taking up another central midfield spot. Casemiro's experience and form is holding down his position at the moment. And that all means that Kobbie Mainoo isn't playing that much at the moment. But it doesn't mean his future's over at Manchester United. It's just a very unique situation because Ruben Amorim wants to give Kobbie Mainoo time and thinks that's best for his development, and Kobbie Mainoo doesn't want to wait for time because he's played a lot for Manchester United already. He has other suitors and he's got a World Cup on the horizon. So if this was season 2026, 2027 after the World Cup, maybe player and manager would be a bit more aligned. But Mainoo has to think more short term, and Amorim is thinking about Mainoo's development long term. And that's why at the moment it's probably quite a frustrating situation for all parties.
I completely get your points. I think there's some really good insight there in terms of how Amorim is helping develop Kobbie Mainoo behind the scenes, because I think there is a few mixed messages about why he's not getting in the team. But the one question I would have back to that is, I understand now Bruno's playing that role that would probably be Kobbie's. You know, the 10 positions are stacked. It's difficult. You can only play 11. But if you're looking for 2 midfielders in 2026, that's still Kobbie Mainoo not getting in the team. Do you know what I mean? So we're past that. Even if Bruno Fernandes goes to Saudi in the summer, we don't know for a fact, but if he does, say if Casemiro leaves on a free, but then you get 2 more replacements in, does Kobbie Mainoo still find himself in the same position?
Yeah, but I think at a club like Manchester United, if you forget about the transfers and you back your development, then a player like Mainoo's got the confidence to say, whoever comes in, I'm going to move ahead of them. And I think that's partly what Amorim said to Mount and now has communicated also to Mainoo. Don't look at transfers. Don't assume whoever comes in is just going to be dropped in the side. If we were talking 6 months ago or when Manuel Ugarte was signed, I think Man United fans felt that he'd be dropped in the side and Casemiro was falling out of favour. And now it's the other way around. So a player will obviously be aware if their position is being strengthened. But a massive club like Man United, you have to just think, I can get in this side. The bigger challenge for me is just that the culture that Amorim walked into mid-season and the pressure at the beginning of this season, and as you rightly say, the lack of any European games to rotate and going out to Grimsby as well in the EFL Cup, so less games there too. It hasn't afforded Ruben Amorim the chance to play the long game. So I'm sure in a perfect world, Amorim would have loved to bed in Kobbie Mainoo, give him opportunities, take a risk on youth. But then he has to look at where the club was at the beginning of this season. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to play the proven Premier League experience of Cunha and Mbeumo. You need to give Sesko time because you've decided at the beginning of the season, he's your number 9. And then as you look a bit deeper, your club captain and a player of Casemiro's experience were probably seen at the time when Man United were under significant pressure as the safest bet in the short term. And again, there's a contrast there that on the training field, Amorim may be working with Mainoo for the long run, but then he's picking a game ahead of Sunderland, for example, where he knows he's under pressure, and you go back again to picking your most trusted players that you think are ready-made to get results. And at the moment, that's probably why Kobbie Mainoo is out of favour. And then you have to also look at the fact that Amorim, being so fixed to this system, isn't going to necessarily overnight change that perspective on Mainoo and decide he suddenly is a perfect fit, which is why the player has to earn the right over a longer period of time to show that he can be above a Bruno Fernandes or a Casemiro in the centre of the park. Fans from the outside will just sort of see the Mainoo attributes and the showreel and go, stick him in there. He's obviously capable of playing and being effective. But I think Amorim, in partially fighting for his job and to win the fan base over earlier in the season, just felt it was a safer bet to go with more experience. And now they're getting results. The last thing that you want to do is over-rotate.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that with the run of results that we're on. I would like to see him get more game time, but let's see in the run-up to this January transfer window. Smash a like on the video, everyone, by the way. If you've got any questions for Ben, get them in the comments, put your super chats in, and we will bring them questions to Ben, because let's make use of him while we have him on our show. I mean, another question I wanted to ask off the back of the original question was about Mason Mount. I mean, it's just a quick one from me, and it's the fact that he's been really important to the start of the season under Ruben Amorim, played in some really important games, played well when he has played. Then the last 2 games since he came back from injury and he's been back in the squad, I don't think he's been used for a minute. He's not been. And there was just a slight question I wanted to ask you. Is there any underlying injury that Amorim's protecting him from? Because I found it strange that he wasn't used at all, considering how well he's done and how much Amorim does like him.
Yeah, I think it's just protection rather than any new niggle or anything to worry about. As you say, Amorim really likes him. He won't want to over-tinker, and he'll back players like Mbeumo and Cunha and Bruno Fernandes to break forwards in that position as well. So you don't need to rush Mason Mount back. And if Manchester United were not winning games, you could make an argument, why isn't he thrown into the starting 11? But at the moment they are. And as a result, I don't think Ruben Amorim is inclined, like maybe Chelsea with their youth-led project and Champions League football, or even Arsenal because they've got a long season ahead, to overchange for the sake of it, even if there was a form player that got injured and then returned. So it's quite smart by Ruben Amorim. And when you're a club like Manchester United and you've got to get back into Champions League football and you know that you've only got domestic football this season, the last thing a player wants if they force their way into the side is to feel like they're going to be in one game, out the other game. So I think Ruben Amorim just wants to make sure that he rewards the 11 that are on this run at the moment. And there's a feeling too that Mason Mount can be a kind of impact player off the bench when needed as well. So I think this is just Ruben Amorim utilising his management skills and making sure that now he's found a winning formula, he doesn't tinker with it just for the sake of tinkering.
Yeah, I can understand that. I really like Mason Mount, but this team's doing really well, so let's see what happens against Spurs. I think that is a game where you could really see him feature, so let's see on that one. I mean, and then on the January transfer window again, there was some whispers that left wing-back is not a priority for Manchester United. I've seen that reported a couple of times, actually, in the January transfer window. I mean, is that correct to your knowledge? Because that surprised me, because I think it's the biggest area in the team, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, that needs addressing. But is it true that that's not really a priority for Manchester United's recruitment team?
Well, I think they're looking at a versatile fullback, whether that's somebody that can play left wing back, centre back. We've discussed that on previous shows, or potentially more an out and out left wing back. And if they can switch sides, even better. So you look at a profile, for example, like Tino Livramento, capable of playing on the right or the left. Kieran Trippier falls into that category as well. These are not Manchester United targets, but that's the kind of profile they may look to add. I don't think it's a priority for the January window. It was obviously looked at in some initial detail over the course of the summer, which is where the Pervis Estupiñán links came from. And he ended up going to Milan instead, and Manchester United never made a bid. They are quite well stocked on that area as well. And also you got Diego Leon, who's doing excellent, I'm told, in training. And a bit like Christian Mosquera at Arsenal, is the kind of talent that Manchester United feel could become very quickly ready for Premier League football. And this is why I would expect them to bide their time. And it may well be a surprise if the left-sided fullback or any kind of fullback arrives in the January window. But once again, we're in this limbo period now where an injury, a run of games with things heading in the right direction, or of course the opposite, can change how recruitment teams think. So I would never nail my colours so early before a January window opens and say definitively they won't sign a fullback. But I sense that position is probably one more for the summer rather than January. Yeah,
it's interesting you talk about Diego Leon, because I've heard some really good things about him as well. And it's just with Amorim, with the limited games, trusting a player in a really important moment when he's not had too much experience at that level, but it's one for the fans to watch out for. And just on that note, is there any other players, youth players in the academy that Amorim's looking at that you know of? Because I know it's a tough season to try and bring them through, but there has been some talk around the fan base that, you know, with the likes of Van Gaal, Erik ten Hag, Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and not in numerical order there in the sense of a timeline, but they all have had their academy talents that they've brought through the ranks. Amorim seems yet to have his. I know it's all been a bit of a whirlwind, but is there anyone that he's looking at in from the academy?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Ruben Amorim at Sporting had a track record of bringing through youth as well. We know that Chido Obi had opportunities, and I think a player like him has been brought to be a first teamer at Manchester United. He was forced into the first team due to the volume of injuries, and now Manchester United are well covered. And the last thing you want to do is bring a player through for the sake of it or too early. And what kind of message does it send as well? I think we saw this to an extent last season as well. If you just bring them up for the sake of it, fine, they train with the first team. But if you stick them on the bench and then you need that position and you don't rely on that young player, I'm not sure that's great for the development, because it's basically just saying you're there to sit on the bench and have a match day experience, but you're not actually ready to get minutes. So there is this protection element as well. Obviously, Shea Lacey is somebody that can be a big player for Manchester United going forwards and has impressed at various levels for England youth as well. So clearly he's one to watch. I've seen a fair amount of Reece Bennett, who I know is quite highly rated by those at Manchester United, but he's a little bit older now, so it'll kind of be interesting to see what happens next there. The loan at Fleetwood, obviously, getting him some game time as well, so that could be one possibility too. And then the other name that I was lucky enough to see in 2021, but I've not actually heard that much about his Manchester United development yet, is a young forward by the name of Victor Musa. And when he was playing for Spain under 16s, he was viewed as a massive generational talent. And I think it was only a year later that he signed for Manchester United. And now I actually believe that he's changed his eligibility and is available for England as well. So I'm really interested to see how he develops as well. I'm not aware of anything imminent with the last two players that I mentioned in terms of first team opportunities, but there's certainly options in the under 23s or under 21 squad. But how is Ruben Amorim, with only domestic football and a focus on qualifying for the Champions League, supposed to do a long-term youth-led project, knowing that he has to just get a short-term result and get Manchester United back to where they belong? And unfortunately, the ingredients that you need to do that are ultimately your senior players. And that's why some of the under 23s or under 21s may get limited opportunities this campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to think that there is some really, really big talents in the academy, and hopefully more coming in, with the likes of, Christopher Vivell doing some really good work in terms of looking across South America and also Europe for them younger talents to actually bring them into the academy. So that'll be exciting to see. I think
so. I was just going to also add on that, though, that if Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and he's constantly looked at the Chelsea model without carbon copying it, but if he's take a leaf out of the Chelsea book, the thing to understand is that Chelsea have 50% big club model, like Man United, and 50% Red Bull model, because everyone knows at academy level, at every single club in the world, the vast majority of players won't make it. So if you've got a majority, why are you essentially saying the ones that come through, great, the ones that don't, we release them? There's a logic that if it's your majority that will always be released, you develop everyone in good faith, knowing that that gives them a chance of playing for Man United, and then you can dine off your successes and also the ones that get released because you raise the value. So Chelsea's model is to say, let's blur the line between first team under 23s and under 21s, and let's let our academy that's normally so private play out in public and create big hype, rotate, put 16, 17-year-olds like Reggie Walsh in the team. Jesse Derry's another one there. And then even if they only play one or two games, because they've worn the first team badge, the value raises. They get more experience. They become more mature for their age. And then if they work, great, because they've been thrown in at the deep end. And if they don't work, because they've worn the Chelsea badge, you sell them for more money than you would if you kept your academy private. So it'd be interesting to see whether Manchester United, as the project stabilises and maybe they get more games to work with in Europe, start doing the same. And as soon as they're into a maybe 60-game season, instead of one that might only be 40, 45, they actually elevate a lot of these talents and give them more minutes. Because Christopher Vivell was at Chelsea, he's well aware of that model. And it is a bit conveyor belty and it is very asset driven. but it means then you would start to see more of the Manchester United academy earlier, but you would also have a fair few players that maybe only play a few games, and you would have a much higher turnover of players too, which not every football fan likes, which is why the Chelsea model has come under a lot of scrutiny. So that's where we might see a little bit of overlap between how Chelsea operate and how Manchester United operate. And over time, we may see more of a evolution towards multi-club within the Manchester United structure and model as well. And I think part of that is why they like Christopher Vivell so much, because he's very comfortable working on bigger picture recruitment rather than only all of the imminent stuff. And it is ultimately the latter that Manchester United need right now.
Interesting stuff. Chris J says the logo always looks like a crown on Beth's head.
I was just
actually.
That, like, you know, at the beginning of the show when you said that I'm the star of the show, which was total nonsense because clearly you are. That was exactly the first thing that I thought. You've got a crown right above your head.
You're bringing us the information, Ben. We'll get you a crown as well. I'd get it edited on there. Chris J, thank you very much for that one. And Class of 99 says, any insights in Ruben probably giving Joshua Zirkzee a chance in 9? Well, this leads into my next topic, which is the striker situation. I mean, we'll start off before I speak about potential incomings when it comes to a striker, because we've been linked to a few names actually as of late, and I'll bring them in a second. I wanted to ask you a little bit on the chances of Joshua Zirkzee going out in January, because we ask about this quite a lot at the moment, not really getting much game time, even though in the summer he was put out there that he was very well liked. I mean, is there any update on his future at all?
Yeah, I'm told that the player is open to a move away. Again, like Kobbie Mainoo, doesn't necessarily want to leave Man United permanently. And I think Manchester United know they'd make a book loss in that scenario. But his intent is to force his way into the Netherlands World Cup squad, which will not be easy because they've got a lot of attacking options. And he was left out of the squad during the last international break. So Zirkzee knows he needs game time and therefore is in a very similar position to Kobbie Mainoo in relation to the World Cup. And the player is exploring options. But the reality is, again, Manchester United want depth. Ruben Amorim really likes Josh Zirkzee, and he offers something a little bit different. And when Rasmus Højlund left, Zirkzee was kind of told, you're valued as a squad player. You can be utilised anywhere across the front line. But if you look at the cold, hard reality, it's 1, Benjamin Sesko, 2, if needed, Matheus Cunha, and even other players like Mason Mount have been given a more advanced position. So add all of that up, and Zirkzee realises his chances are few and far between. I think he's played something in the region collectively this season of 90 minutes, and the vast proportion of those minutes were only due to an injury in the Burnley game, and every other opportunity in terms of the length on the field has been 10 minutes or less. And what are you supposed to do as a striker if you're only getting 10 minutes? I know you can have some impact, but it's so difficult to build confidence, score goals. So I kind of empathise with Joshua Zirkzee, but you look at that front line and it's also very clear that there isn't a starting place for him at the moment. So I think we have the same position of 1, Zirkzee is likely to ask to leave on loan. 2, Manchester United may say the same thing they did to Kobbie Mainoo. No, you're valued as a squad player, and that won't change unless they happen to find an opportunistic striker, maybe a more experienced name in January. And then number 3, which is equally as important in all of this, is there actually going to be a suitor that can afford the wage and take him mid-season? West Ham is one possibility, potentially. Roma, if they send back Evan Ferguson to Brighton, might be in the market for a striker as well. But it's definitely not going to be clear-cut for Zirkzee just to knock on Ruben Amorim's door and ask to leave for the World Cup, because why should Manchester United help a player for his country if they think he's more valuable as a squad player seeing out the season?
Do you know what? I do feel a bit sorry for him. I feel a bit sorry for Mainoo as well. I know you can only play 11. But with Joshua Zirkzee, I thought you saw the best of him last season when he did actually have a run of games. It is so difficult when you're just getting cameos here and there and being thrown into games. But, you know, sometimes it's the way the cookie crumbles and you've just got to fight hard and try as best as you can to get in. Ruben Amorim has showed, you know, if you do the work, he will give you an opportunity. So hopefully we can see something from Joshua Zirkzee in upcoming games. I think he's a bit of a ball in me. I think he deserves at least a little bit more time off the bench than what he's getting. But let's see what happens with that. And in terms of if he went out, because United have been linked to a couple of names, Ben. I mean, we've actually got a little clip of you with a potential target for Manchester United. Maybe you can do a little introduction for it.
Yeah, happy to. So earlier in the week, I went over to Valencia and I did an exclusive interview for Gimme Sport that aired this morning with Etta Eyong, who's a Cameroon international. He's only 22 years of age. And a lot of people are calling him the next Haaland, although he told me he's more similar in profile, he believes, to Harry Kane. He's got 6 La Liga goals, 1 for Villarreal, 5 for Levante, and 3 assists. And only Kylian Mbappe this season in La Liga has got more goal contributions. Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, even Arsenal and Chelsea have looked at the player, and there's going to be a whole lot of hype when his release clause kicks in the summer. So Manchester United and Etta Eyong could be one to look out for in the summer. But one point worth noting is he can't go anywhere in terms of playing time mid-season because he's already played for Villarreal and Levante. So he won't be able to participate for another club mid-season, although in theory he could be signed on a pre-agreement. So this is one more for the summer if Manchester United choose to add another young striker. And earlier in the week, I asked Etta Eyong, would you like one day to play in the Premier League? And here's what he had to say. Do you think we might see you one day in the Premier League, playing against or alongside Carlos Baleva?
For me, it's a dream. For me, it's a dream to play in Premier League. Why not? But for the moment, I'll stay focused right now where I'm in Levante. But it's on my head in a dream or a future to play in Premier League. Why not beside Baleba? Will be very good. Or why not beside great players that are there? Because there's so many great players that are there also in Premier League.
Watching the physicality and the pace of the Premier League, do you think your style of play would be well suited?
Yeah, I think my style of playing fits directly like what is doing there in Premier League. My way of playing, I'm physically good. I go to duels. I do so many things. I think that's my way of playing because when I watch the game sometimes, especially like the Boxing Days, that is in December, I like to watch most of that part of Premier League because there you can see everybody give everything at 200% there. That was the part that I really love in the Premier League. That sensation that you play a game very important. That is a week that is very important in the season.
Which other players or teams as a kid or now in England did you watch or did you like? You've mentioned Chelsea and Drogba. Is there anybody else?
In United, there was also Van Persie. Van Persie was the player that was doing everything with style and confidence. So. And Rooney also, when Rooney was a great player there by that time in United. Why not? It's a very great team also, United.
If I had to put you on the spot between La Liga or the Premier League, do you have a preference between either of those leagues?
I love the both leagues. I've already achieved my dream playing in La Liga. Now my other dream is to play in Premier League. So the both leagues are very great for me. So it will be a dream also to play like Premier League.
Some great interviewing skills there from Ben. Ben, that was great. I love to see that insight, and he seems like a really positive character, really good attitude, clearly keen to play in the Premier League, seems to like Manchester United quite a lot. Tick, 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 tick. And a young player that's up and coming and has got a very high ceiling as well. Just to clarify, what is his release clause? Is it out there?
The release clause isn't out there. So he was signed for €3 million and his old club Villarreal have a sell-on clause believed to be in the region of €50 million. The market value is about €20 million. And I would wager that anyone that prizes him away from Levante will probably have to take that 3 million and minimum pay around €30 million. But the release clause is not public knowledge.
I mean, I'd love to know what that is, to be honest with you. But €30 million for a player that has a lot of potential would be quite an exciting prospect for Manchester United. So keep an eye on that one, I would say, as there is links to the Premier League. A bit of a different-ish profile to Benjamin Sesko as well, and maybe they could complement each other. Who knows? So let's see what happens with that one. Another name we've been linked to quite a few times.
By the way, as well,
Oh,
just to add on that of course internationally he plays with Brian Mbeumo, and his best friend is none other than Manchester United target Carlos Baleba. So there could be a scenario where Manchester United have a whole lot of Cameroon in their team.
AFCON will hit us hard. I mean, but, you know, it's good for the players to have relationships if that is the case. So let's see what happens in the future. But I wanted to move on with the same in the striker talk after that great insight from you with Etta Eyong, a name to keep an eye on. I wanted to move on to another name that I keep seeing in the press, but I don't know if it is just a bit of paper talk or if there's any truth in it. Vitor Roque, Ben, have you seen the links from Manchester United to Vitor Roque?
And obviously, we're again talking about the kind of player that when Chris Vivell was at Chelsea, he was focusing on. A Brazilian, obviously somebody that was at Barcelona. And the only thing I would say about this particular player is, from what I understand, he's very happy where he is. So the move to Barcelona was tough, and he didn't enjoy it in Europe either. And he arrived in the same category as a sort of Esteval Willian or an Endrick, somebody that was really capable of hitting the ground running, didn't get that many opportunities in La Liga, back to Palmeiras, and suddenly red hot again. And I think he's quite comfortable where he is at the moment. So of course there will be Premier League interest, and anybody, if he does go back to Europe that signs him, will probably benefit from the Barcelona journey and the loan with Betis as well. But I think the challenge there of persuading a young 20-year-old that didn't love his time in Europe is to get him now to leave Palmeiras within the next calendar year. Nothing, as far as I'm aware, even though the calendars align a bit differently with the Brazilian league, will happen mid-season because he wants to stay in Brazil and hopefully gain selection for their World Cup squad.
Very talented player, I think. I did a lot of background work on him when Manchester United were linked to him before Barcelona got him, I'm pretty sure. And I think I did a lot of background on him then. I remember doing a couple of videos on him, I think. I know he didn't work out for him in Europe, but I still believe he's really, really talented at 20 years old. So let's see how he develops. But he's doing really, really well right now.
There is Premier League interest there. And I think the only caveat to what I said, like with Esteval Willian, is if the right valuation is hit, player and club could have different perspectives. I think you're looking at about 60 million euros minimum to start a conversation there as well. So he won't come cheap, but it will all come down to not just what Palmeiras want financially, but whether the player, having moved around quite a lot and having had a difficult spell at Barcelona, is prepared to come back to Europe relatively early after returning to Brazil with Palmeiras.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. And then in terms of Brazil, a Brazilian, Endrick as well, a little bit of talk on him regarding Manchester United. Pretty sure that deal is off as of now, but could you give an update if there was any conversations between Real Madrid, Endrick and Manchester United about a loan move for him?
Not as far as I'm aware, or nothing major anyway. So Lyon have done really well to get ahead of the market here. And I think it highly likely that Endrick ends up joining on a straight loan in January to Lyon. He'll go somewhere for sure. Lyon are trying to wrap it up early and get a pre-agreement in place to avoid any surprises. But there's not much encouragement for Premier League suitors at the moment. His most likely destination is Lyon. And even though we've heard links with several Premier League clubs, including Manchester United, it's Lyon that are in the formal talks. And I'm told they're really, really close to actually not just persuading the player or being a front runner, but actually the parties are not far off even finalising this one to be done ahead of when the January window opens.
And then is there any other strikers that Manchester United should keep an eye on?
Well, I think striker-wise, if they do anything in January, it would be somebody more experienced. I know you're smiling because you want me to say Harry Kane for the umpteenth time, but he's not going anywhere in January either. But to reiterate, Kane's got a diminished release clause in 2026. And as I've said hundreds of times now on this show, Kane will always say, Bayern everything, England everything. Let's see the true reality of whether he wants to move next summer and try and break Alan Shearer's Premier League goal-scoring record at the end of the season, at the end of the World Cup, when it's much more apparent what he's won at Bayern.
Come on, Bayern in the Champions League.
Yeah, because
I'm Team Bayern Munich this season.
That's the irony, that I genuinely believe with Kane, he'll be more incentivized to stay at Bayern whilst waiting to win a Champions League and loads of silverware. If they go and win it all domestically in the Champions League, you've done everything there. So maybe then you move on and do 2 seasons in the Premier League to try and break Alan Shearer's goal-scoring record. In January, rather than going young and then finding that player doesn't play, unless they choose to loan back or pre-agree, they may decide somebody a bit more experienced is necessary, and that might open the door for Joshua Zirkzee to go to a Roma or a West Ham. And this is where a lot of people day on day are asking me about Ivan Toney. And what I can say about Ivan Toney is that the player has not held a recent conversation with Thomas Tuchel. So people are putting 2 and 2 together, either linking with Man United or Spurs, obviously under Thomas Frank. And they're presuming that the player's got in his head World Cup and returning to the Premier League to be selected. But don't forget, he got a World Cup call-up under Thomas Tuchel whilst in Saudi Arabia. He's playing for Al Ahly, who are the defending Asian Champions League champions, and he's got a heck of a tax bill if he returns any earlier than 2 years. So I think it's quite complicated to get Ivan Toney out of Al Ahly in January, even on a loan. And Al Ahly have just got a new sporting director as well, and he wants Ivan Toney to stay. So I don't think much will develop between Ivan Toney and Manchester United or Spurs, even though there might be some formative interest there on the right terms. But if there is that opportunistic older name for depth, and it suits all parties for Zirkzee to leave, maybe we can't discount a striker. But I think these younger names are not going to get any benefit coming in mid-season, because you've got your starting striker in Benjamin Sesko, who is young. You've got Mateus Cunha. There's still the ability to bring through Chido Obi. Adding another young striker in January, not going to help Manchester United in the short term this season, not going to get that striker enough minutes. And as a consequence, I don't think we'll see a young arrival unless it's a pre-agreement for the summer or a loan back.
Yeah, and just on the topic of strikers, I've just been sent this article actually about Ruben Amorim opening up a little bit about how Benjamin Sesko has found it a little bit hard to settle in terms of, you know, the fact that there is a lot of scrutiny, there is a lot of talk, and he admits that he has struggled with it a little bit, but he's going to end up embracing it. And he said that Benjamin Sesko is the striker for the long term. He's got a lot of potential. I mean, how is things on the Benjamin Sesko front? Because I think he's had a little bit of unfair criticism in the media. And then Jason Wilcox came out in his comments saying he's doing really well. Amorim's backing him there, saying he's the striker of the future. He has potential. We've got to be patient. Is everybody happy with him at Manchester United? And maybe that experienced striker could support him.
Yeah, and again, if they signed a young striker less known for under 30 million, people would naturally have less hype. But it's Benjamin Sesko. He scored a lot of goals and the price tag was high. Mm-hmm. And there was a big public battle with Newcastle, and there was the option for Ollie Watkins as well. So all of that only adds to the pressure. But Manchester United genuinely still believe that Benjamin Sesko will get going and quickly. I suppose it kind of happened with Rasmus Højlund under Erik ten Hag, where he wasn't scoring for a long period of time. And I think Sesko's got off to a better start at Manchester United than Højlund did. But then you may remember mid-season, Højlund suddenly found a purple patch, and then for whatever reason, and surprisingly, it dipped off. With Benjamin Sesko, Manchester United feel that once he gets streaky, he'll start scoring a lot of goals. They've set him a target, I'm told, even though no one will ever confirm this publicly. But sources told me they set him a target at the beginning of the season that was actually quite high. And they said to Sesko, go and better your Bundesliga highest total for RB Leipzig, which was 14 goals. And that would obviously be massive and quite an ambitious aim. 14 Premier League goals for Benjamin Sesko. So he'd have to get now 13 between today and the end of the season, which is difficult, but not impossible. But when they said that to him, he wasn't surprised. He wasn't perturbed, and these kind of targets are never going to be made public anyway, so it shouldn't add that much pressure. I know I've basically just made it public, so there's me contributing to the pressure, but that's kind of what journalists, unfortunately, through our profession, inadvertently do. But this is a confident player. It's not someone with his head down. It's not somebody that feels uncomfortable in a big environment or culture, and he's the kind of player that really relishes clear instruction and shouldering the burden of pressure as well. And he's very capable of scoring in lots of different ways as well. And now what they're trying to get him to do is be a little bit more versatile, to build that connection, drop a bit deeper, allow a Mason Mount, Bruno Fernandes, etc., to push forwards, maybe get a few more goals from outside of the area as well. And over time, between now and the end of the season, they think he's very capable of hitting that number of 15, which is a massive aim, and maybe also adding to his assist tally as well. So I think judging Sesko at the end of the season is going to be a much better approach than trying to overanalyze how he started in his first 10 Premier League games.
I completely agree with you, Ben. I said I'm going to give it till Christmas to make my first judgment, and then end of the season as well. Be patient with a young player adapting to the league.
Even Christmas. I mean, like, I remember when Nico Jackson joined Chelsea and he got absolutely battered in his first season. And then at the end of it, it turned out he got more goals in his first season at the club than Didier Drogba at Chelsea. So I think one of the reasons why they've set him quite a high target, even if publicly that number is dismissed or denied, and that takes the pressure off the player, is because if you hit that kind of number and compare it to great Man United strikers in their first season at the club, I'm sure, I don't know off the top of my head who, chat can probably find out and play detective, but I'm sure that number, if it's as high as I've suggested he's capable of getting, it will surpass several Manchester United greats. And that's only in your first season at the club. So that's what they think he's capable of. And I wouldn't even judge him over the festive period. I'm going to be reserving judgment right up until the last game of the season. And then let's see how many games he's played and what tally he's at. And if it's not working and he hits a lull, you put Cunha as a 9, you play Bruno further forwards, or you start Mason Mount alongside Brian and Bumo. And that's why they went into the market and got 2 10s, both also capable of getting into double figures.
Or potentially Joshua Zirkzee, depending on if he's still here. But everyone, get your comments in, smash a like on the video. I'll come to some of your comments in a minute. I've seen them. Thank you very much for contributing to the show and getting involved. Speaking of Christmas jumper, they're available. Link in the description. Go and grab yours. We need to remember, Ben, to do a Christmas jumper show. We'll get that going.
I was disappointed we didn't do a Halloween show because I had a really good Ghostbusters costume and I matched my dog, who also had a Ghostbusters.
Oh, we should have had him up.
And then I had like a paper mache slime, and then I played the Ghostbuster music, and then we had these sort of fake pistols or whatever they're called in Ghostbusters. So yeah, Christmas festive all over it.
All over it. You need to, you know what, you can send pictures into the show, just how you sent in your video with Etta Eyong doing your brilliant interview there.
That's a professional video. I'll send you the personal ones on WhatsApp instead.
Yeah, I can do that. And then when they end up on the show, you can't blame me.
I've got some
people want to see. People want to see the Ghostbusters costumes. But no, next year we'll definitely do Halloween. This year we've still got loads of time for Christmas. So that means you've still got time as well, all you guys watching or listening, to get your Christmas jumpers to join me and Ben when we do make that happen. The lead up to Christmas is on. So go and grab yours with the link in the description. Next up on my agenda, as we get towards the last little segments of the show, is an update on the midfield, Ben, your favourite topic. I just wanted to ask, can you give us an update on United's midfield plans? Is there anything coming out around targets? I know you said potentially 2026 for 2 midfielders, and that kind of contributes to one of the super chats that we had in, which was, is Amorim using what he's got with playing Bruno as an 8? Do you think he could push Bruno back into a 10 if we ended up getting Champions League and a proper number 8? So there was a few comments asking about Bruno's future. If we're getting 2 midfielders, does it mean he's going back further forward? Does it mean that he's off to Saudi? And then midfield targets as well, been linked to Stiller, Anderson, Wharton. Any updates on that?
Obviously, we got some very credible reports saying that Bruno Fernandes doesn't want to go to Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi's perspective, and it is only their side, is they've not shut that door yet, and money can always talk. Jordan Henderson said no twice and then joined. Victor Osimhen has said no for 2 years, but they're still pursuing him. So lots of players that have said flat no's are still on the Saudi list. and eventually money can talk. But of course, if Bruno Fernandes qualifies Man United for the Champions League, who's to say that he doesn't want to stay? So there's a few moving parts in all of this. Regarding his position, it's obvious if Cunha, Mount and Bumo are all firing and fit, then to squeeze in Bruno Fernandes as well, you've got to drop one, if not two of them, or you play Bruno Fernandes deeper and you encourage him in the attacking phase of play to still get forwards as well. And the more he plays in that deeper position, maybe the more comfortable he is and he starts to enjoy that role as well. So Bruno Fernandes' future is not clear cut. As for the midfielders and incomings, I think sometimes we just have to repeat ourselves because not a lot changes in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. When I broke the story that Manchester United don't just want one, but they want two midfielders in 2026, that was the new news. 3 weeks later, a lot of people are saying Man United are going to sign at least two midfielders in 2026. So all I can really do is repeat my reporting that that's what I said 3 weeks ago, and it might even be three midfielders if they also add a young one as well, and the number of midfielders, if it is three, may be contingent on outgoings as well. So the internal priority is going to come first here. What are they going to do with Bruno Fernandes, and are they on track for Champions League football? And Fernandes has always hinted that as soon as the club get to a point where they say we want to cash in or we want to move on, he would also be very understanding of that situation. But we're obviously not there yet. Casemiro, if he signs a new deal, likely have to be on reduced terms. If they can't agree that, even though he's important at the moment, we can't totally discount an exit. And there remains some Saudi interest there, but nothing is developing at this point. In January, there's not many of the targets they like that are available. Wharton isn't going to go mid-season. Carlos Baleba won't be sold. Adam Wharton is not going to leave in a World Cup year, and Palace wouldn't entertain that. They might even get him to sign a new deal. And Elliot Anderson's not a player that's going to be available mid-season. Angelo Stiller, release clause for the summer, but it could be overridden. His club Stuttgart can pay €2 million and take the release clause out of the contract. So everyone wants now, but everybody listening would probably bite your hand off for two of the names that I've just mentioned. So if you have to wait for two of those names, it'll be worth it rather than panic buying earlier and then finding you can only get one of those two names. And again, by the summer, you'll know where you stand with Bruno Fernandes, where you stand with Casemiro. If you've got Champions League football, that's where we're at the moment. Conor Gallagher, as I've mentioned, is a January player that Atleti would sell. They might loan, but it's not a given. And that could be an area of opportunism. And maybe if Manchester United want to push between now and the end of the season, you take Gallagher on loan with a buy option, knowing that you can have your cake and eat it. If he works, you sign him. If he doesn't work, you don't sign him. He's helped you maybe still as a squad player get Champions League football, and then you can take your pick from all of the other names in the summer. That might be one possibility, but it's contingent on the fact that Atleti have got to agree to that. And when Manchester United tried that tactic for a loan in the summer, Atleti said, buy him or we're going to keep him until the end of the season. So in that particular instance, Atleti have to change their perspective. Otherwise, there'll be no movement on Conor Gallagher, because I don't see Manchester United paying €50 million to sign Conor Gallagher early in January, knowing that €50 million might be better served spent on one of the other names that we've mentioned in the summer. And this is why the context, the timing of when they move, the outgoings in the summer, money they might bring in through those players leaving, they're all really important. And I suspect we're going to do every show between now and the end of December, pretty much repeating that summary. So if you want to save yourself some boredom, clip out that answer and then just play it to yourself every week until we establish if there's any other names in the mix. I think we are going to be circling around this. Do they stick or twist? Do they do anything in January, or do they put their budget towards what will be a massive amount of, I think, elite midfielders available in the summer 2026 market, likely after the World Cup finishes?
Yeah, I think patience is a virtue, and some of them names are really exciting. And the more money we have to spend on them, the better, especially when the price tag for Elliot Anderson, who absolutely bossed us, by the way, he was brilliant in that game, he is near enough every week for Nottingham Forest. The price tag that's coming out around him is around 100 million, I've heard. Which is
but
just crazy.
By the way, on that point, let's not forget Tyler Dibbling, when he was linked with Man United, was 100 million, ended up being sold for half of that. Morgan Gibbs-White was 100 million. and there was a secret release clause. Don't be surprised. I can't say too much because I know a bit more than I would say I'm willing to report, but don't be surprised if when Elliot Anderson is looking for a move, it's a little bit cheaper than some reports are suggesting at the moment.
Ben, have you got some information to tell us?
Nothing on record at this point.
Hint, hint, hint.
But just don't be surprised if the price is significantly lower than 100 million. And it reminds me a little bit of Alexis McAllister too. Remember when he left Brighton for Liverpool, and for months and months and months, it was 60, 70, 80 million. He ended up joining Liverpool for 35 million pounds. Elliot Anderson's contract is quite complicated, and I would be staggered if anybody needs to pay 100 million to get him out of Nottingham Forest. It's just a case of whether he leaves next summer, whether he does another year. And, you know, when we were first speaking about this, we were thinking Forest, European football, Forest, ambitious project. Forest are going to build. They've basically got two squads, one for Europe, one for the first team. They made loads of good signings over the summer. But of course, his situation could also be influenced if they go the other way. So there's a price, as far as I'm aware, for the summer. And I think it'll be a whole lot lower than 100 million. And if the unthinkable happened to Nottingham Forest, and for example, they were to go down, he'll be even cheaper and available on the market as well. So I would just reserve judgment on price for now. And I wouldn't be too put off by this 100 million number, because my understanding is Elliot Anderson is available in the market if he leaves Forest in the summer for another number that is significantly less.
Significantly less, people. And this is why Ben is the GOAT of the United stand. We'll come back to this. Just like at the start of the summer when you mentioned Sesko and then at the end we'd signed him. We'll come back to it and we'll see. So thank you, Ben, for that. Take the hint, everyone, in the comments. Thank you very much on that. That's got me very excited, because I think Elliot Anderson is such a quality footballer, and you can just tell he's destined for the top. In my opinion, probably be pushing for a starting place at England. He's that good. So yeah, let's see what happens with him. But some really good insight and information there, Ben. Thank you so much for that. And then, just to kind of wrap up the show, I wanted to ask you about the ownership situation. Is there been any development at all on the UAE situation when they were potentially putting together a consortium to maybe put in some sort of bid for the ownership of Manchester United? Is there any updates on that? Just want to ask about it, because it was in the press, you know, a few weeks ago. We did speak about it. So if there's an update on that.
Yeah, consortiums take time to build, and we don't know whether this consortium is going to materialise. And sometimes when a consortium, whether formed or non, reaches the public domain, it can be tactical to almost seek out investment and cause a bit of buzz. And this is why I think some Manchester United ex-players like Eric Cantona were approached, not as investors, but almost ambassadors in case it comes to a head and maybe carries more substance. At this stage, I'm not aware the consortium has contacted the Glazers. I'm not even aware that it will progress. So discussing making a bid for Manchester United versus actually alerting the Glazers to that are two different things, and it can often take time. The other aspect is that the Glazers still value this football club at over £5 billion. And if their valuation is not met, we know that an exit simply won't happen. And they will also be aware that as the new stadium project gets off the ground, that will only raise the valuation of the club. And that's the beauty of Manchester United. The brand has shown itself over the last decades to kind of be bulletproof, regardless of what the football club does and how the stadium looks. And when you know that your brand will always pull in money, then you can be confident that the football club's valuation will always raise over time, regardless of what happens on the field. And if you get it right on the field, even more so. So Sheikh Jassim, who felt he was bidding against himself because in the end he was the only one that wanted 100% of Manchester United, as Jim Ratcliffe pivoted to minority investment, as the SEC filing shows, never went anywhere near £5 billion. And this consortium, even though it's not made a bid or approached the Glazers, also feel like were they to make some kind of formal approach, we don't have a Rain Group tender like the last process. So there's no need to go crazy high, other than the fact the drag clause stipulates you've got to give Sir Jim Ratcliffe $33 a share. And because of the AB relationship and the non-Glazers shareholders, all shares would have to have equal consideration. So in essence, it's implied, if not stipulated legally, that everyone would have to get $33 a share. If you take $33 a share, which is nearly double the market enterprise value as of now, you're overpaying at a premium to buy the club. And I'm no exact mathematician, but off the top of my head, $33 a share would only take you to 4.7 billion. So you're still below that 5 billion valuation. And maybe the Glazers with the new stadium project say 6, 7, 8, which is their initial position when they first went to Rain Group and said, if you can sell us this club at 7, 8 billion, we'll walk. But nobody was prepared to bid that. So they didn't. And that allowed Jim Ratcliffe to come in as a minority investor. So it's all very well having a consortium, but if anything's to develop, the Glazers are not going to leave unless that number's hit. And I don't think there'll be many, if any, investors right now that are prepared to meet the Glazers' valuation, which is why I think things have gone relatively quiet. So the short answer, not that I ever give one, is that we'll have to wait and see whether this consortium can find the funds and genuinely choose to approach the Glazers, because contrary to some suggestions, that hasn't happened at the moment. The consortium are in an internal process of determining, can they find the funds? Are they prepared to bid? Are there any ambassadors that would back them if they do so? And we'll have to wait and see whether this carries any substance or it'll be one of those stories that just fades away. And when I lived in the Middle East, I probably covered 20-odd takeovers or prospective, and several groups came forwards and made a massive buzz and never bid. Newcastle United had about 2 of them. And I think Man City, before they were taken over by Sheikh Nayan, had several other investors from the UAE that were adamant they were going to bid and made a massive fuss about it and then never actually tabled anything. So I'm quite skeptical, only because the only way this has substance is if they actually go directly to the Glazers. Then the Glazers would have to alert the stock market, and then we would know there's something in it. Until the stock market knows something is happening, I think we have to reserve judgment. And at the moment, it's all quiet on that UAE consortium's front.
Yeah, I think that's a good insight for everyone to kind of take away from the show, because I know a lot of people got excited over the potential of the UAE consortium coming forward, but things like this takes a long time, and plus people can change their minds, things can pull out, different things can happen. There's so many different elements that need to all fall into place for this to actually come into the forefront and actually, you know, start developing and then turn into a bid. So we're literally before the process even starts here on that. So
yeah, and I think the last thing I would say is that I broke the story that it was a UAE investment group that were part of this. I broke the story about Eric Cantona being approached. And in both stories, I said, just reserve a bit of judgment here. And then subsequently, we've heard all manner of stuff that have caught those involved in this potential, and that's a keyword, consortium, by surprise. The Beckham story, because David Beckham doesn't back things before they happen. It was the same with the Qatar World Cup. It was the same with Sheikh Jassim. Yes, he can be approached, but Beckham is only likely to back a project relating to Manchester United with somebody that's in, and then he'll consider if he wants to be involved. Beckham only backed the Qatar World Cup after they won the World Cup, not when they were bidding, because some ex-players have got a bit of reticence about just putting their name to something, knowing there may be a low percentage chance of it happening. So we're hearing a lot of spin-offs, a lot of stories about who this consortium may be, and they've intentionally not come out and said that. But obviously, as journalists, we're digging, and it's logical, without sharing too much more details, that if I'm breaking the story there from the UAE, and if I'm breaking the story that they've spoken to ex-pros, I've got a fair idea of who they are, but this consortium wants to stay private. So then when you then go back to your sources, having got a relatively strong network out in the Middle East, because I lived there for 7 years, and you put to them some of the other suggestions, some of them, I suppose, is just social media speculation, that they've already held a meeting, that the Glazers have said they want to sell, that it's advancing. All of these things are catching those involved by surprise, because a potential consortium is still at a very formative and internal stage. And the honest truth is it could lead to something, but there's just as good a chance that we never hear about this potential UAE consortium again, because they decide, okay, we want to investigate it. And in the end, they feel that it's not the right time to approach the Glazers, or there's not a sale there to be had. Yeah,
I think the key word to take out of that is potential. Potential. That is the key word I'm taking away from it. So thank you very much, Ben, for that insight. It's really good to hear, your side of it, especially because of them great connections that you do have. You've broke quite a few brilliant stories out from the Middle East before, and we've spoke about them on the show, so it's good to have your insight on that. And everybody else as well is very appreciative of all your knowledge. It's been a cracking show. Make sure you smash a like on the video for Ben, everyone. It's been brilliant. We even got a Jacobs cracker in there around Anderson. You didn't want to say too much, but we'll get it out of you. We'll get it out of you at some point. But thank you very much, everyone, for getting your questions in as well, all of the super chats. And please remember, on That's Football as well, tonight it is Werder Bremen versus Wolfsburg. So make sure you are there. Live match footage for the Bundesliga, along with Goldbridge, who will be commentating and watching along that game with you. Lovely, lovely people. And also early start tomorrow as Manchester United head down to London for Manchester United against Tottenham Hotspur at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's an early start here on the United Stand. Countdown to kick-off will be live at 10:30 a.m. We have me, we have Maud, we have Ricky, we have other special guests as well, so make sure you're tuning in, followed by the Goldbridge watch-along. And then that evening as well, you've got Sunderland versus Arsenal, which Arsenal aren't really slipping up yet, but Sunderland, they're giving quite a few teams a run for the money, so that could be a really interesting game as well, so make sure you stay tuned across all of our channels, all of our socials, and get involved. Ben, thank you very much. Lastly, score prediction for United.
2-1 Manchester United. Tottenham have been really poor at home. They were dreadful against Chelsea, and I expect Manchester United to continue this unbeaten run. And I do think they'll take all 3 points at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Love it. We'll end on that note. Thank you all, you lovely people. Have a brilliant weekend, and we'll see you on the next one.